Want to master Swift charts in 45 minutes? In today's SwiftUI Design Challenge, we'll build an iOS budget widget from the ground up. View model, polished UI, and all. Hey, I'm Paul Solt, a former Apple engineer. My SwiftUI code powers GoPro Quick. Grab the starter project in the description down below. Let's fire up Xcode and race the clock. This one's going to take 45 minutes. It's going to be tight because we've got a lot of code to do. We've got to do the layout, view model, chart, and then design the chart to make it look stylish. All right, so this is our target UI. We are going to have some pieces of information. We've got the total budget amount. Then we've got the daily limit here. We've got 0 at the bottom. We've got the days of the week formatted. We've got 7 days of content that we need. We've got background pill shapes and foreground stylizing, and we're doing the pill shape on the bottom. So there are no lines. So this is kind of a clean design. And so that's kind of the look that we're going to go for with this. So let's focus on getting the first portion of the UI. Everything else down here, this is all part of the Swift chart. So let's go ahead and just sub this out. We're going to change in the quotation marks with Vim mode, and we're going to switch this to 125. And then we're going to have another text underneath, and this is going to be remaining this week. All right. So that's going to be our starting point. We're going to stylize the layout with the alignment and spacing. I'm going to do leading and then spacing of 0 and then get rid of the rest of that. And after that, we're going to have some kind of spacer. We can customize the spacing, and then we're going to have a chart right here. Now you're going to get an error. We can't find the chart because we need to import Swift charts. So let's import charts, and that should make that error go away. If we just want to see this, we could set a background, and we should see sort of the extent of the chart so that you can get an idea of what that's going to look like. And I'm going to stylize this a little bit so that it looks a little bit more interesting to get started with. So let's go ahead and choose a font. We'll do system. We're going to have to do this pretty quick. We are going to go with something like a size 30. I'm going to do a weight of, let's go with black. That's going to make it even bolder. And then let's go with design, which we're going to actually choose rounded to give it a little bit more character. So we'll start with that. And then next up, we've got a smaller font. We're going to do a system. And for this one, I am going to do a size of, I don't know, 15 or 10. Let's go with 10. It's a good number. We'll go with bold for this one. And I'm not going to worry about the design, so we'll just sort of end that there. And then we are going to do a foreground style of secondary so that we get a secondary color here. Now, sometimes this gets a little bit wonky on updating and it doesn't update right away. I'm going to comment out the chart and see if that helps this display. I don't know if it's just being slow for us. So let's go ahead and run it. And that will put it on the simulator so that we should see the values, and it's set up to my iPhone. So let's switch this to the iPhone 16 Pro. And we should see something. For some reason, it's not rendering. I don't know if I have a typo, but we can see that it's working fine over here. So let's just hit refresh on the widget simulator and see if we can get that to work. I'm going to comment this back in, and we should be able to see the chart here. It should show it up right down below, and we see it right there. Okay, great. So that's a good starting point for this chart. What we're going for is going to look more like this. So to customize this, we're going to need a data model that's going to have the days of the week and the amounts of spending. And so our next thing is to work on getting that working. It looks like our preview finally caught up and is now happy. So for the view model, we are going to need information to store for each of these day amounts. And we are going to then need to calculate days so that we can display it. I tried doing this with just strings, and it gets messy once you have duplicates. So Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday were basically duplicates. They were getting smushed together. The data was totally incorrect. And so we're going to need to actually mock up some real looking data for this to get started. So let's go ahead and create our daily amount for our design. And so that's going to be an identifiable so that we can work with SwiftUI. And this is going to be our daily budget. This will be identifiable, which just means it needs to have a unique ID. And we'll set that up with a UID on start. And then we need to have a day. This will be a date. And then we need to have an amount. This will just be a double to visualize the information. After that, we need our view model, which is going to be using the new observation framework. So we'll make it observable. This will be a class, and this is going to be our budget view model. I like using view models because you can just sort of inject them into things, and it's really a good way of organizing information. So that's our starting point. Let's go ahead and fill this out a little bit. So we're going to have a daily budget array. That's going to be our list of 7 days that we want to display. Initially, I'll set that to empty. And then we're going to have our daily limit and our weekly limit, which are both going to be doubles. The daily limit we'll set to 80 to match the design over on the left. And then the weekly limit, I'm just going to pick a number, something like 425, somewhere around that ballpark, whatever you want your weekly budget to be. Pick something that's going to make sense. So that's going to be a good starting point. And then we're going to have an init where we set things up. Now in here, I want to create another function that's going to calculate some of this information for us. So we need to create some mock data since we don't have any like real data for this. And we're going to create a function called create daily budget. That's going to create our daily budget array. Okay, and in here, in order to create the daily budget, I need to get a set of weekdays. Okay, so this is going to complain. I'll just return an empty array for right now to stub it out. So I need to get the current week days given a date. So this is another function that we're going to create, and this will give us an array of dates. So initially we can just return empty and fit this right there. Okay, so to do this, we're going to use the calendar. So this is going to be the bulk of the logic if you're ever trying to sort of visualize information like this. We want to do Monday through Sunday, or you could do Sunday through Saturday. And we're going to use the calendar to help us with all of this date math. So let's go ahead and implement this method, and then we'll implement the method above using this method. All right. We're going to do a Gregorian calendar using the identifier method. And then we're going to customize the start of the weekday. So calendar dot, and then there's the first weekday. This is a 1-based index. So 1 is Sunday, 2 is Monday. So we're going to set this to 2. So 2 is equal to Monday. 1 is equal to Sunday. So you can decide how you want this to start. And then we need to get a week interval. So let's get a week interval. This is what we're looking for, is we want to look at the calendar and essentially pick a week to start based on our current day. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to say calendar dot, and then there is a date interval, and we're going to look for a certain one in here. So we've got a few different options. So we're looking for a date interval of for, so the of is going to be of the weekday, and I think we want this one right here. So we're going to go for the week of the year. So there's 52 weeks in a year. We're trying to pick out one of those weeks. And then the date is the date that we're passing in, else we'll do like a fatal error, unable to create week interval. If you give it invalid date, this might fail. If we're giving it normal dates that actually exist, it shouldn't be a problem. All right. After we do that, we are now going to iterate over this information to create this array. So we're going to say, let's start day equal, we're going to go into our week interval. There's going to be a start day. So this is the first day. And then we're going to create a new array of days that is going to be of type date. And then we are going to use the range operator to create 7 values for us. We're going to do a compact map, and we are going to have our day here as our offsets. And then we are going to do calendar.date by adding value 2. And so we'll be adding a single day component. So we'll say day is what we're adding. Value is the day that we are adding to it. And then our 2 is the start day. So that should give us a good starting point. And that should give us 7 values. Now, if we've constructed this wrong, you might get 6 values. That's going to affect how much information we can display in here. So we need to make sure we do this correctly, or we're going to have some unexpected results. We can display a lot of columns. I was a little concerned that we might not have space, but they can get pretty tiny. So we can work around that. Okay, so that's our first set of information. So let's go ahead and fill this in. So we're going to say, let weekdays, and then we're going to go ahead and sort of create our daily budget using this information, and we're going to zip it up together. So I'm going to say, let weekdays equal current weekdays. We'll give it the date of today. So it's going to give us the week for this week. And then we are going to get some amounts. I had an issue when I first tried this. I did not use 7 values, and that's going to make it so that you don't have 7 days displayed. So just make sure that whatever values you type in here, you've got 7 of them. So we'll count that. I'm just typing out some information. And if you want, you can try something greater than 80. So that will trigger some other coloring. And we'll get to that a little bit. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 values. That's what we want. If you want to do 14 values, you could do something like that. Do 2 weeks. You could customize this data to do that. So I'm going to zip this up. We're going to have 2 different sequences. So we've got weekdays and then amounts. And then we're going to map this into a day and an amount. And then we're going to plop this all into our budget. So we've got that daily budget up top. Day, we pass in the day. Amount, we pass in the amount. Okay, so that's going to create an array of daily budget for us. And now we should be able to return that budget. Okay, so at this point, we have a data model that's going to set things up. We actually have to still initialize it because it's going to be empty. So we're going to say days is equal to create daily budget. And now we should be good to go with our initial data model. Okay, so we need this in order to display anything on the chart. Okay, so we've got our amounts are remaining this week. Now we're going to focus on the chart display. So let's scroll down and start customizing that. To get started with that, I'm going to create a variable that's going to allow us to customize the bar width. And this actually can probably just be a let. This will be a CG float. And when I'm working, I like to extract these. I'm just going to extract it now. We can customize how wide these lines are going to be. So that's going to be the one variable, one knob that we're going to be able to turn to customize some things. Okay, up next, we're going to get some actual data on display. Now, the chart design that we're looking at, and let me pull it up so you can see it bigger. There is a background chart, and we can get this effect by layering 2 charts on top of each other. So this is something that we can layer multiple charts. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to do a background bar fill, and this will be a for each, and we're going to go through our data So we need our view model here. We actually have to initialize that. I didn't do that yet. So let's go ahead and say state var view model is equal to our budget view model, and then we'll initialize it. So doing that, we can then go over our view model dot days, and we are going to then do day in. And then for each one of these, we're going to do what's called a bar mark. So bar marks are how we display bar chart information. And they're going to have an X, Y, a width, height, and stacking is the one that we're going to look for. So it's going to be this one here. Now, these are optional. So I'm going to hold the Option key, and you're going to see that they get a little bit darker or brighter. And we're going to press Enter and insert them. I'm going to do Control M to put them all on separate lines. So that's Control M. And we've got 30 minutes to try and get this working. So I think we're on track. We spent about 15 minutes getting our data model set up so that we can now start customizing some of these things. So for any of these things, we need to do some kind of value. So plottable value, we do a value, and then we give it a label and the autocomplete here is not actually helpful. So let me just type that again. Value, we see there's a label key and a value. So for the label key, we're going to do day. And the value is going to be coming out of our day that is passed in here. And this is the X. So what do we want for the X? We want the day. So it's going to be a date object that is going to be passed in here. Then we'll tab to the next thing here. We're going to do another value. And for this one, we're going to do amount. And we could do day.amount just to see something. And then we're going to have our width. This is going to be a fixed marked dimension, and we are going to pass in our bar width. And then we've got a height. This is also going to be a fixed value. And technically what I want here is I want that daily limit. So I'm going to do ViewModel.daily limits, and then stacking, we'll just do standard. We're going to customize this for one of them. Okay, so that's going to give us all of this stuff, and it's going to be all in blue. I actually don't want to do the day amount. So you're seeing the day amount right now, and 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm only seeing 6 values. Hopefully we have the right amount of values. If we need a quick sanity check, we could print out days.count, and we could update this again, or we could run this, and we should see 7. So 7 is what we expect. So I'll comment that out. But the display is going to be a little bit weird. Okay, I'll get rid of this background so it's not modifying that right now. And I don't want the day amount here. I actually want this to be the background bar chart. So if we look at this, we see that pill shape. So to get that, we're going to just do a view model daily limit. So they should all, if we refresh, they should all be the same height. That's our goal. And now I see 7 values here. So that's good. Now, I want this to be a background. So to do that, what we are going to do is for each of these bar marks, we're going to have foreground style, and we are going to set this to gray. And then I'm going to do quaternary. It's a little hard to say. This is the 4th level of shape style, which is going to make it very faint. Okay. Next up, we're going to do clip shape. So you'll notice that they are a flat on the bottom. So we're going to do a clip shape, and we are going to do capsule, and that's going to make it so that they're bubbly on the bottom and bubbly on the top. Okay. So that is great. And that's our background. So now we actually have to show our data fill. And to do that, we're basically going to copy the same stuff. So let's just copy this for right now. And instead of showing the daily limit, we're going to actually go back to what we were doing, day.amount, and that's going to display it. And we don't want this foreground style, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And now you're going to see that everything's sort of stacking on top. And this is where that stacking option is really important. Instead of doing stacking, we're going to do unstacked. And now that's going to put it in front. So this is how you can layer your different chart information. Okay, so that's unstacked. If you learned something about getting started with Swift charts, hit the like button. And if you want to get more tutorials like this one, you can subscribe to my channel for more SwiftUI design tutorials. Let's get back into it. And now we have to customize the day display. We have to move this over to the left side. We have to get rid of the lines. And to do that, we are going to get into some more APIs. Okay. The other thing that we want to keep in mind is, let's say I spend $300 on one of these days. That's not going to look very good. So now we need some way of capping it and then displaying it. We'll update colors at the very end, but I want to prevent data from going over a certain amount. So we can use the min function to say the day amount or our daily limit. So ViewModel.dailyLimit. And that will allow us to cap something to just under the $80. Okay, so we're going to need that. The other thing that we're going to need is, if I didn't have that, I really want to control the chart options. So we have some chart Y scale, and there's a domain that allows us to set the domain of acceptable values. So we can say this, and then we can say ViewModel.dailyLimit. I don't want it to go outside this range. This is going to ensure that when the chart is displaying information, it's consistent, and that it will be within our expected sort of scale. Now, you'll notice that for whatever reason, after doing that, it changed the numbers on the right to be out of 75, and now 80 is just going over that. And this is where we want to control the marks. Okay, so to control the marks, let's start with the weekdays down at the bottom first, and then we'll do the right-hand side and customize that. We're going to use a date format style, and we're going to set up the chart y-axis. Or sorry, x-axis. So let's go chart. We start typing this, there's an x-axis, and then we're going to look for the one that says content, press enter. You can delete that. If you save it, you're going to notice that we now just lost the bottom portion, but that's okay because we're going to customize it. So now what we need to use is what's called an axis marks, and there's a few different variants of this. And for this one, I'm going to go for this bottom one. So this is the fifth one in this list. It's the format preset position values stroke. This is not only going to allow us to get rid of lines, but it is also going to allow us to format using a date formatter. So pressing enter is not going to fill out everything I want. So let's type that one more time. And we're going to hold the option key, press enter. Now I'm going to do Control M to just make this go on to separate lines. In the format style, we are going to use date.formatStyle, and we're going to actually instantiate one of these. So you need those parentheses. Now we're going to do weekday, and then we're going to give it a narrow format. This is going to give us the tightest format, so it's just going to be an M for Monday. All right, so for preset, let's do aligned. And then position, let's do bottom. So that's going to be on the bottom of the chart. And then values, we're going to try and use automatic. And there's a desired count. Now, it will sometimes pick a different amount from your desired goal just to make it look nice. So there's certain rules for charts to make them look good. And then we've got a stroke here. So we can do a knit. And then line width. For some reason, I'm losing autocomplete here. If I did 1, you would see there's a line through each of these, and I don't want that. This allows you to customize like where you see lines. We don't want any lines to match the design that we're going for over here. Okay. So by setting that to 0, we are now seeing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So double check your data if you're not seeing this to make sure that you've got the right amounts. If you only wanted to show 4, you could customize this, save it, and it's going to be like, nah, maybe 3. Okay. If I do 3, it doesn't show 3. It's like, oh, I want to show 4. If I do 5, you're going to see it's going to be like, nah, that's going to look weird. So it's going to pick certain values and only show certain values, and it likes to show 7. So we're in luck there. So that's the y-axis. Now, if we didn't do aligned, if you just went with the automatic, what you would notice is that these are offset. And so we're not matching the design, and it's a little bit confusing because we've got super tight formatting. This probably works better when you've got more space, but we've got limited space here, and so we need to customize it to be aligned, which means in a vertical line for this particular label. So that is our x-axis. Next, we're going to do the y-axis. I'm going to show you another API that we can do here. So as soon as we sort of take over, we have nothing. We've got a blank slate. And so we're in control of what marks are going to be displayed, what lines are going to get drawn, and what information is going to get displayed, and where it's going to get displayed. So we need to create a access marks. And there's this other API that we're going to look at, and I got to double check and make sure I get the right one. Either one of these should work. So we're going to get this one. It's going to give us a value in. And in here, we are going to go with an access value label. So access value label. And then the label itself, we're not going to do anything special except the content. And then we're going to get a number from the value. So value is like this generic type, and we're going to do as double.self. So if we can get a number, we're then going to do a SwiftUI text, and we're going to do the number. And I'm just going to do the format. Actually, let's just do the number to start, see if we see it. And actually, I think I'm missing something here. We're going to have to give it that format, or we have to do string interpolation. So let's give it a number formatter. We're going to do a I lost my train of thought for this one. This is going to be currency, right? Currency. So we're going to do currency, and then the code is going to be US dollars, so USD. And then we are going to do a precision, and this is going to allow us to do the fraction length of 0. Okay, so if we type that correctly, we'll see it. Now, the one thing that I forgot, I said access marks with just the value, but just like we did customization right here, we want to control where this sits. And we also want to control the values that are going to be used here. So we're going to actually have to update access marks. And this is going to be a little annoying because I don't want the format one. And the preset we can try, but I don't think this is going to really affect us. I can show you what some of these look like. The position is going to be leading. So that's the one value that we do want. And then the values, we are going to do 0 and our max budget. So that's going to be our view model dot daily limit as the two values that we really want to display. And then we don't want the stroke. So let's see if we get rid of that. And then there we go. And if I do Control M, we can get those on separate lines. So if we just look at this aligned, I didn't notice a difference between aligned and automatic. They seem to be the same in this regard. But if we did something like inset, you'll notice that it's going to put the label here, which is kind of weird. So I'm sure that might help in certain scenarios. We don't need that. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just leave it here so that you can customize it if you want. Okay. The other reason we're using this is because by default, our axis labels are going to display with the secondary color. And if we want to customize that, we need to take control of it. And so that's exactly what we're doing here versus the previous one, we just relied on it. Because our design, if I pull it up again, uses black and bold, I want to customize that a little bit. I'm not going to worry about the bold on the bottom for right now. I think probably just calling attention to the amount here, the daily limit, makes more sense to me. So we're going to customize that right here on the text. We are going to set up the font. And we're going to do a system font of size. And we're going to go with 10 and the weight. So I'm going to hold the Option key, press Enter. We're going to do 10. And we will do bold. And then we'll get rid of the design. And I need another closing parenthesis. So that gets us bold. Next, what we want to do is we want to do the foreground style. And this is where it's hierarchical. So if I want the primary style, I can do this. And what you'll notice is that the color doesn't change. So it's not changing. And in order to get that to change, we need to actually do color.primary, because if we do an option click on this, we'll see that this is a hierarchical shape style. So there's a whole bunch of different things that can be here. And so that works really good. Like in the previous 2 demos I've done, that works really well for changing the color to be faded. But in this case, we want it to be black, and to take over, we're gonna have to use color.primary. And this will actually work for both light and dark mode. And so that's really cool here too. So if we switch the color scheme, you will see that is gonna be white in dark mode, and then in light appearance, it's going to be black. So that makes this just work, which is great. The other thing is it's a little tight and crunchy here. So to get a little bit more space, we're going to do padding, and I'm just going to do dot trailing, and we'll do 4. You could do 40, and you can see how this can squash down, and we can actually fit a lot more data here. I don't know if we can do. If I do too much, you might be able to get 2 weeks of data here. It's going to be tight. The labels are going to get scrunchy. So I don't really advise it. Like a week's amount of data is probably the right amount. Getting some kind of padding here, you can control it. Gives just a little bit more breathing room here. If we want a little bit more, we could do something like 8. And that's going to push it over. Sort of better match the design. That might be a little bit better. Okay, so that's the y-axis. We've got 12 minutes to sort of wrap this up. So the next thing I want to do is I want to update our display so that when we're overspending, we can see that we're overspending. And we're going to use red for that color, and then we'll use orange, and then we'll also make these gradients. So let's go ahead and write a method that can give us the color. Now I'm going to have a threshold of 80%, so 0.8. That is going to be our, and this could probably just be a let. So this is 80%. And then down here, we are going to create a new method that's going to be function color for amount. You're going to pass in the amount as a double, and we're going to give out a color as a result. So let's use that threshold value that we have up top down here. Okay, so if amount is less than our, let's say less than or equal to the threshold times daily limit, we're going to return color.blue. We technically don't need to write all that, so we could just say write blue. Else if our amount is greater than the threshold times daily limit, and it is amount is less than or equal to our daily limit. Then we're going to return .orange. And then our last case, else, this is going to be if the amount is greater than our daily limit. We are going to return red. So this little bit of logic is going to allow us to stylize this a little bit better. Let's just double check what I have here. I have a typo, so daily limit. So that's our color for amount. You can pause this if you need to type this out. So we're going to use this method to customize the bar display. Let's scroll down to the bottom. And so we're looking for our data fill. And so for each of these bar marks, we are going to set the foreground style. And we're going to say ViewModel.color for amount. And we're going to pass in the day.amount. Crossing our fingers, that updates our display. So now let's go play with those values. So, sorry, I left that really quick. So this is where we are. This is our data fill. We're just customizing the bar mark and setting the foreground style to the color for amount method. Okay, so if we scroll back up to the top, we are going to customize some of these values. So if I set this from 300 back down to 30, you're going to see that that went blue. If we go up to 80, we're going to see that it's orange. If we go to 81, now it is red. So that's kind of how our color coding scheme is going to sort of map out. If we do 70, we're going to see that it is above that 80% threshold. If I do 60, you're going to see that we're under it. Okay, so that's how you can sort of play with the data. Let's go back up to 300. So that's working. Next up, I think we just have one more thing, and we're going to finish with a little bit of extra time to recap everything. So the next thing that we got to do is we got to connect this. So this is our remainder for the week. So we need to connect that to the data model. So let's write a new method that's going to basically go through our daily budget and determine how much money is remaining from our weekly limits. So let's go in here and we'll call it remainder. This is going to be another method. So I'll just scroll down a little bit. This is going to give us a double amount, and we are going to basically loop through everything. So we're going to say var total is equal to weekly limit. And there's different ways you can write this. I'm just going to do a simple for loop here. Xcode will autocomplete some of this for us. And then we'll do total minus equals day dot amount. And then all we have to do is return total. So that's our business logic for calculating the remainder. Now we just have to plug that in right into the UI down below. So this is from our view model. So we're going to say view model dot remainder. And then we're going to do that format. And for here, we're going to do that currency. So currency code, we're going to pass it US dollars, USD. And here it's going to be trying to do those decimal places, and there's just not enough space based on the font size. So this is something we have to keep in mind, is we might need this to get smaller if it needs to. If that is the case, we could do minimum font scale factor and do like 0.9. And that's not quite enough, maybe 0.8. 0.8 gets us that. But like if this is thousands of dollars, we probably need to go maybe like 0.6 as a minimum scale factor so that these values actually work out for us. Okay, but I don't want the decimal places. So again, we'll do the precision, and then we'll do fractional length, set this to 0, and end those parentheses, and there we go. So that's our data model. Let's go ahead and hit run, get it on the simulator, and then I'm not sure if there's anything else for us to do. So we're finishing a little ahead of schedule. It's been about 39 minutes. I knew this was going to take longer because it took me an hour to get through this initially, because there's just so much. So here we can see that we are in the red because we've overspent. This is all coming from our data that we've configured. So if I want to see what does this look like if I change the data, we will see this update, and you will see that this is calculating 125. We go and update any of these values, we're going to see that change. Now, if I bring up the the preview again with Command Option P, that's going to refresh this display. This allows us to just sort of play with some numbers. So if we need to play with some values that are going to be a different range, let's say our weekly limit's $1,400. That's going to give us a little bit more wiggle room, some bigger numbers. Let's say our daily budget might be 180. We're going to see these values are going to update in real time. We can see when we're spending over that amount. 180 is a lot, so maybe something like 105 might be more realistic for a daily budget. And you can just sort of see how these values dynamically update, play around with making some of them bigger, smaller, and just sort of see how that works. So that's how you can play with the app, customize it to fit your needs, sort of see how different data flows. And that's our starting point. So to recap what we've done today, we designed our initial layout. So that was mainly focused on this top portion. And then we had a chart that we had to fill out. Now, to get the chart to fill out, we needed a view model. We designed a view model that is actually giving us a whole set of days in a week. And so we are asking it, if we're looking at the calendar, we're asking it for a starting day and giving us all of the days that follow that so that we can get this formatting just like the calendar app has. So you can use this same type of logic if you want to display anything sort of like in a calendar format. And once we had that information, then we could zip that together with some mock data to create some interesting information that we can display on the screen. We're coloring based on how much you're spending, and we have a certain threshold that controls that. We're calculating the remainder based on the data set that we're given, so that you should ideally be able to plug in your actual app data and visualize the user's information here rather than just having mock data. Now, in terms of the graphing, this is where we're using Swift charts. And for Swift charts, to get a style like this, we have to plot two graphs. We have to plot the background graph, and then we have to put our data on top. That way we get the pill shape so we can sort of see it fill in. If we didn't do this, what you would see is we would just see the information here. And you kind of lose context because there's no lines of how things should fill out. So by having that, we get a little bit of context without having to have graphing lines of how much data is displayed. And anytime we're doing stuff like this, we can always control how dark those are or how light they are. And so by using these different color styles, we can customize this to be fainter or darker. And so this gives us enough context without being overpowering. The other thing that we did in here is we were limiting the days. When we don't limit the days by the amount, what happens? Well, we go out of bounds of the content. And so that becomes problematic for displaying information. If we were to look at that, we should see something like this one get graphed off the screen, but we did set a content Y scale. So that's going to also help save us from displaying too much information. Right now it's really thinking, for whatever reason, the simulator in the preview gets stuck sometimes. So here we can see that without that information, we kind of lose context of what's going on here. If we were to run it again, you would see that we are limiting, we're showing the appropriate range, but now we have values that can go outside. And so that's where the minimum function allows us to set what is the max amount. It's either going to be the amount or it's going to be our daily limit. When we do that, that helps us control the range. You can see how the position, if I did top, would allow us to change. Let's see if we can get this preview to work again. We can change the Monday through Saturday and Sunday to display on the top. So these are the things that we can customize. We can do the same thing with this. If we want trailing, we can move this over to the other side. So those are our chart customizations. The other thing we're doing is we're customizing the access value label. I'm not showing any tick marks because we didn't want any for this design. And that's pretty much it for this widget. So hope this was helpful. The other thing that we can do is this widget, and I might do this as a separate tutorial, has another view. So if we want to visualize a different look, we could have categories of information. So we need a little bit more data, and then we could display it in a larger format. So this is the medium style versus the small style. All right, so if you want this final code, I've got a link down below. We are out of our 45-minute timer. And so you can go to the, I don't know, I have it right here. You click that link, you can get both the starter code as well as this final code that I just presented. And I've got a bunch of other tutorial code that you can get as well. So that's our budget Swift charts app using SwiftUI. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions down below, just leave a comment and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.